And now it is time for the presentation to start. So I'm going to turn it over to Melinda Dolezal, the Director of TRAID.
Thank you so much, Davin, and good morning, everybody that is joining us today. We're excited to present all of this information. Much of it will be focused on children and younger individuals, but it's information that can be applicable to anybody who has a need related to communication. And just a quick word about TRAID. It is a statewide program that serves individuals of all ages and all needs through assistive technology. So everything from wheelchairs, walkers, and canes to communication devices, daily living devices, and everything in between. So that being said, this is a bit of a different presentation for us. In the past, we've had multiple TRAID centers presenting on various topics, but today we're very lucky to be joined by one of our staff at the Westchester Institute for Human Development, specifically Gemma White. Gemma is a has a certificate of clinical competence and is a speech language pathologist in New York, New Jersey, and in the UK, licensed with affiliation to the American Speech and Hearing Association, or ASHA, where she serves on the AAC, or Alternative Augmentative Communication Special Interest Group 12, Professional Development Committee, Royal College of Speech Language Therapists in the UK, and the National Association of Neonatal Therapists. She knows what she's talking about. She is one of our stars in the TRAID program, and she's been working with youth and using the TEACH model, TEACCH, since the 1990s. So she is a wealth of knowledge, an amazing TRAID staff, and we're lucky to have her here presenting on AAC and body safety awareness. I do want to give a quick trigger warning for some of the content in this presentation. It is focused on, as you can see, body safety awareness. So that being said, I'm going to turn it over to Gemma. If you do have any questions, we'll do our best in the Q&A in the chat to answer them. So take it away, Gemma.
Hi, thanks so much for having me. I am a speech and language therapist or speech and language pathologist, depending on which side of the pond we're on. I've been working in New York for the last 23 years, and I'm predominantly in Westchester, at the Westchester Institute for Human Development, and we are a very little small piece of TRAID where we loan assistive technology. And I've worked with a lot of different app groups over the years. And I've really lucky that I started in this world of assistive technology back when the iPad just was born. And I had people that were really interested in it, and I felt like this rogue SLP that was out on this like journey. And it was just so effective and so wonderful, and it gives people a voice. And my aim really is to unlock the potential of nonverbal individuals and to destigmatize use of AAC. There's a lot more in the media these days. Speechless was a great series that you can look at. Not the best depiction of AAC, but at least it's out there. Out of My Mind is a wonderful Disney movie. If you have Disney recently, they did a great job of utilizing symbol-based AAC systems. So more and more people are recognizing the value in symbol-based communication and what that can do. So what is my why? I have 5 of my own children, which is a large number of children to have. And about 7 years ago, the school approached me about some catfishing that had been going on, and I had to have discussions with my oldest son about what catfishing was. Well, the school really did a phenomenal job of that, but we had to explore whether or not he was one of the victims. He was not. The school did the most phenomenal job. So here I am as a parent watching my children go through the most robust education program, like on the back of this like horrendous betrayal of trust within our community. There was an education program that was second to none. And as a parent, I'm watching my children go through it, and none of what I'm seeing was there professionally. And there was this big gap, and I went on this crazy crusade, as my boss likes to call it. So over the next hour and a half, we are going to look at what AAC is and understand how it can be used to promote and teach body safety awareness for individuals with disabilities across all ages who are nonverbal. We're going to look at different customizations that I found are necessary within AAC. so that people can learn to be better self-advocates. And we're going to consider sort of subtle implications of the language that are innate within grooming behaviors and commonly exhibited by those that engage within sexual abuse. I am indeed a speech and language therapist, so I like language. So what is assistive technology, right? The big us. We are an umbrella term which looks at any piece of equipment that will make an individual with disabilities function better in their environment. Anything as simple as my glasses, I take these off, all of a sudden my screen is very, very blurry, to a wheelchair walker. And under that umbrella is something called AAC, augmentative and alternative communication. So the first A is augmentative, something that you add, you supplement. It might be a sign, a letter of speech, or something that you're making your message clearer. And A is an alternative, something completely when you have no access to verbal speech at all, and you cannot be understood others, and you need a completely different way to communicate. So people often have fears about, if I give somebody an AAC device, am I going to stop their verbal speech? I'm like, no, look at the definition. In my very name, I want a multimodal communicator. So you can have unaided communication where you don't need anything external. You've got gestures, you've got sign language, facial expressions. I mean, really, people can tell you a lot with their facial expressions. Or you can have something which is aided, which is where the trade loan program comes in, because you need something else, you need a thing. And this could be anything from a paper-based communication system, something external that you're using to convey a message, to more something high-tech. And we loan out both frequently. And actually, we donate a lot of low-tech communication systems over the summer period when we want people to be like out by the swimming pools. Please don't break the device. Here, learn to use this. And it really works phenomenally. So systems that you need to carry around with you to all of these different environments to really be productive communicators. These are some of the systems that we have at TRAID. You have either dedicated durable medical equipment, or you have unlocked durable medical equipment, or you have iOS or Android, devices, your regular iPad, Android, Samsung computers, which are multi-purpose, and the user just downloads individual applications, and we have a lot of those that we loan out. This is a video just showing you the dynamic display. So you can see how as you're pushing the buttons on the tablet, the screen moves from one screen to the other. So you could say, I want to go home, or you could talk about your body, if something's bothering you. Oh, my feet. Oh, my feet really, they hurt right now. My feet hurt. So as you push the buttons, the screen moves through, and people really learn to very quickly use that symbol-based communication system. Much like when we learn to use a keyboard, when you put a keyboard in front of you, initially you don't know how to type your name, but I bet if I put a blank piece of paper in front of you, we go to the next screen, that you would be able to type your name on that keyboard paper. And these are just some examples of different augmentative alternative communication systems. And you can see the symbolic, the I, you. Some of these words are very hard to depict, like the word get, the word do. Like, how do you make those words a symbol? Because what we need is something called a robust communication system. What our speech therapists like to refer to. You can see that there's very much similarity across these communication systems. You have the I in the same sort of places. This is a lovely company that I want to highlight because the crux of this presentation, this company have been working with us to provide, they provide free AAC on multi-platforms. They're called Weave Chat. And I've been working with them recently to any language that we want added, and you guys are welcome to contribute to this because there are a lot of people on this who are experts in abuse prevention, where I'm really not. I'm an expert in language and communication systems. So collaborate with us and we can make changes, and this is free. So any police officer, lawyer, professional who has a device can download this application and will have access to a robust communication system. Now, you can't just learn this in a vacuum, okay? But we do know from education that people understand things better through symbol-based communication systems. We've worked with the medical department, things like this. So to me, this is a natural thing. Please find an SLP, a speech therapist to consult with. You really do need help with this. But that's a bit of the background on augmentative and alternative communication systems. So then I sort of went into like some of these statistics, right? You guys know a lot of this all too well, but there are a number of people who identify as boys and who identify as boys who have experienced sexual abuse. There are really alarming statistics that I don't need to tell the people here, but people go missing every 40 seconds in the US. 91% of children receive unwanted solicitation online. This world is changing. And what's fascinating is children between 7 and 13 years old are the most vulnerable. And that tells us a lot about when we need to start safety education and the language that we need to be utilizing with individuals. There was a very specific study that looked at individuals who are AAC users, and 45% of people who utilize AAC were interviewed experienced crime or abuse. 97% of people know their perpetrators. That is critical. 71% report multiple victimizations. So this happens to you multiple times with the same individual, multiple types of victimization. So you could have, loss of property, loss of theft. There's personal as well as physical property. Only 28% of people report their experiences to the police. Within New York State, there was a study just at the end of last year, and they said that individuals with IDD, so that's developmental disabilities, intellectual developmental disabilities, are 5 times more likely to be victims of domestic violence. The call to end the silence, to find a way to communicate. If people are 5 times more likely to be victims of domestic abuse, then we have to find ways to communicate effectively. The long-term effects on these individuals, it's really sad. It's really challenging. And we have to have policies and practices in place which help end silence. So more people are able to actually report things to the police in an effective way, and that we continue to educate people. But we want to educate people without making them scared or suspicious of their surroundings. We need to give people the ability to access language before they need it, as opposed to having to formulate something that is really so challenging when you need it. And that involves awareness and practice prior. Really, I think critical is that we have to make sure that, and so this is what I've really advocated for, all of the body parts are within the communication devices, and provide people with concepts so that they can be assertive and confident about their own bodies and their boundaries. So all of this, this work, I have to give credit to Dr. Shoshana Dacus. She is the SAR psychologist who has worked innately with me on this to understand language, because everybody needs to sort of stay in their lane and collaborate together. Child safety remains the responsibility of the adults. Your safety as mandated reporters, we are responsible for the individuals within our care. So has anybody here had to actually report abuse or neglect? We have a poll. If you don't mind sharing this information, we only have 2 polls. I'm just going to give you a minute to respond. Okay. Do we see the results? Okay, so more than half of us have had to do that. Okay, phenomenal. Can we go to the next slide, please? You're very brave, everybody. Goodness me, I'm so sorry. That's me going too fast. I'm going to let you control the poll and not touch my computer. I want to ask who personally knows somebody who has experienced, or you yourself has experienced sexual abuse. And I'm going to put in reference here that I am a survivor of both childhood and adult sexual abuse, and I didn't report it at the time. And I seem to be fairly eloquent, don't I? So this is a subject which is exceedingly dear to my heart on a very personal level. And we need to make our children be better advocates and the people in our care be better advocates. So I am asking you to share personal or have you sat with somebody information, and maybe we could see those results. That is 74% of us. That is more than 3/4 of us. So that is not shocking and really sad. And you're all really brave. So there are concerns with safety education which are completely and utterly unfounded. Because really, what we know, if we can manage this whole situation in a developmentally appropriate and non-threatening way, we can teach learners to be better self-advocates. We can teach people to protect themselves, and we can teach people to trust their gut. Helping you name feelings, name people, name your body parts. So much language is involved with this topic. And because, you know, the typical abuser is not what I grew up with, not this idea of some like dude in a trench coat who's going to come around the corner and offer you candy. Like, that's not what happens, right? Like, 91% of child sex abuse is perpetrated by somebody that the child knows. So that's familial sexual abuse, that's somebody that you know, children and adults. So part of being a mandated reporter is just being a good listener. And I think as a speech therapist, we often create very safe spaces where people do disclose. And how we respond to those disclosures can have long-term impacts on the case and the individual's feelings about the event. So beyond that, you know, we know that you have to have significant wait time with AAC users. It takes them a tremendous amount of time to formulate sentences. This is one of my mentors and teachers, Gail Van Tattenhove. She had the foresight to pull out a video camera back when you literally had to schlep it out the cupboard, which is why the recording starts halfway through. And I'm going to be able to let you watch this and take myself a cup of water.
Hi. Wait. More. I wait more.
Well, John, you've told me quite a story. Why don't you hit speak display so everybody can hear the whole story? Thank you.
It was time to eat. I wait and wait. No one there. No one comes. I'm afraid no one here will help me eat. I wait more. He come and say to me you don't tell. He mad and weak. He go away. I wait more.
Well, I'm glad you could tell me about it. Is there something you need me to do to fix it? You can take care of it yourself. Excellent.
So he was utilizing one of those systems that we had pictured at the beginning called an accent, and it's a robust language system. What came to light as I saw my children getting the most amazing body safety awareness education, much of which I get to share with you today, I realized that these robust language systems that I was recommending did not have the words that psychologists needed for all of us. And so I was like, where is the penis? And that's what my boss got really annoyed to me. And after today, you will add it if you have one of these systems. I was sort of working on this board, this low-tech board for the medical department, which was a low-tech communication system, and I was collaborating with them, and I was looking for the word penis, and I said to my husband in bed at the time, and obviously there were issues because, like, what are you doing? And I was like, how do you spell penis? And I'm very dyslexic as well. So the fact that I didn't know how to spell penis or could have been making a mistake, was not beyond me. And it's not something you typically type into Google. And lo and behold, in this, symbol searcher for AAC, which it was pretty cool, there wasn't the word penis. I was not spelling it wrong. And then I started looking at all of the other language systems that I love. I love Lamp Words for Life. I love it. No penises, no vaginas. You could have an itchy bottom. That's okay. But if you have a UTI, you kind of had issues. And so then I started talking about this in 2023. And after that, this AC system called Cough Drop, they added in this private parts folder, so everyone can change. And then 2 years ago, Touch Chat, which is a different vocabulary. They initially did not have the words. They added it in to their language system. So now you go body parts. All right, you've got all of your generics, and then you have this private parts folder here, and you can penis, and you can scrotum, and you can vagina away, and if penis hurts, you can tell somebody. Because I don't know about you, but with my 4 boys, I've been to the hospital with one of them at least once with a query about testicular distortion. Like, that is a no joke thing. For getting abused, like, we have to talk about this. Like, when you're toilet training, like, boys, put your penis away. Like, if I, the British girl, can get up here and talk about this, you guys have to too. Lots of the language system, they have these bliss symbols, which you can do. So why do we need to talk about real words? If we are embarrassed, if we are shameful, and we show embarrassment, then we're teaching our kids that we're embarrassed. Like, we have to teach toilet training, and for AAC use, like, we know that we have to teach it in the real world. So when you're taking the child to the bathroom, you have to say, go bathroom. You have to say, penis out. And if children are able to identify their body parts in those very normal situations, then you're able to more likely to do it when you have to identify abuse, God forbid. And then one of the things that Claire Raymond, she's retired now, she was phenomenal. She worked at the Child Advocacy Unit at WID, where they did lots of the forensic investigations. So she noted to me, from a linguistic perspective, that abused children often have no names assigned to their body parts. So you can't think that it's just going to happen. Like, we all have to make it happen. So now, like, okay, so if we have all of these AAC systems, like, why is it missing? Is it that there's like age restrictions? Like, did you know that these age restrictions have absolutely nothing to do with content and all to do about data privacy? That's a little bit scary. How much data they can collect based upon your age doesn't monitor the content. So one day, like, I go to this school, right? I'm an AAC consultant, AT consultant going to a school, and Aid brings me and she goes, Gemma, you gotta help me. You have no idea what's going on. So this girl, she's in middle school. She'd gone to add a button, right? She's gone to her, like, and she's gone add button, and then she's found this symbol sticks in there, and they've got all of these adult symbols, and she's scrolling through, laughing hysterically. Like, the symbols are in the systems. Like, they're not there within the vocabularies. They just were missing from the ground up. And more of these systems nowadays do have penises and vaginas there. And they did make you take down, I was the penis lady from the website, weird, which I thought was unfair. And this was my camera roll at one point, which was possibly accepting, some sort of acceptable use policies were violated, but it was all in the name of research. Because basically, child safety, users safety, remains the responsibility of the adults who are programming the devices. Anybody who has a touch trap vocabulary prior to last year will not have that private parts folder in there. There are many, many people who have to. So it is your responsibility as a clinician to add those in. Body safety is a topic that we have to discuss with all people. There was a study done through one of the LEND participants in a few years old now, in 2016, but she sent out surveys to the preschools in the Westchester area. And from those that responded, none of them had in place body safe health and safety awareness programs for the children with significant special needs. And they had some of them had a person assigned, and they addressed it on an as needed basis. Well, that's just not good enough. So hopefully health and safety education now is happening more and more within the institutions, and you have to look at when is it happening and who is doing it. And that's why the speech therapist is so interesting. Like, it's not for me to do. I am not the one who should be doing the health and safety education, but I need to support it linguistically, and I need to make sure that everybody's there. So within that, I started looking at what are the topics that were covered within a 3 to 5 year kid. So when everybody who comes out of kindergarten at school, my own children's school, has to know how to do these 5 things. Okay, they have to be able to identify private parts. They have to know who can see and touch those private parts. They have to understand what unsafe versus safe, comfortable versus uncomfortable. We'll get into some of that language a little bit later. And surprise versus a secret. And they have to identify a circle of trusted adults. So developmentally, a 5-year-old level should be able to do all of those. That framed it to me, right? So they have this amazing social story that they have about private parts. And I went on to work with some of the speech therapists and the psychologists at my department to develop things, because I found that the school that my children attended was, we had to look at things a little bit more from a gender inclusive environment. And when you do that, you have to look at things kind of separately. I worked with the non-binary SLP in Australia to really help me understand the fact that, you have to have your sexual orientation, the bits that you're born with, and your gender as different concepts. So linguistically, we have to be very clear about that, and we have to be very sensitive that body, gender, and abuse all has to happen education-wise at different times, and that these moments have to happen over time. So for the private part identification, we were talking about the fact that, your bodies are good in special places, they deserve care and respect, some places are private. So the words that we were pulling out was the private, is private, that word private, in every language system. Nobody gets to see and touch. We're talking about concepts of seeing and touching, and we're talking about those again in safe times, in different environments. Private parts are covered with our underwear and bathing suits. Do we know about clothing? Is all of the clothing there? People have some parts that are same and some parts that are different. We have parts in the front and parts in the back. We have parts inside and outside, and we have to label the word penis and the vagina. I've had this come up to me before where people are like, should you really be saying vulva, Gemma? Maybe. I think the world's only just about ready for vaginas. So I'm gonna stick with where I am. You have to talk about the private part being at the back being a butt, and you have to talk about nipples and breasts and chests, and all of those words have to be there. The vocabulary itself is really important. What I really like about TD Snap, one of the language systems, is they talk about internal body parts, and you have your vagina there, versus external body parts. And they were actually one of the ones that changed and were able to add this vocabulary, which was phenomenal. Word private, right? If we're talking about concepts of private and concepts of safety, do we know the vocabulary, and then do we know the pathways to the vocabulary? Like I showed you that main screen. Some of these vocabulary systems have no more than 3 hits, like Words for Life. All of the vocabulary is 3 hits away. Some of this vocabulary is 3, 4, 5 pages away from that home screen, that dynamic display that you saw. So is my user able to find the language from the main page? This doesn't happen in a vacuum. So we can give somebody an AAC system, but we've got to make sure they're able to use it. We've got to make sure that people have like the boundaries of their body and that they recognize that they are and have control and autonomy of their body. And one of the things that becomes part of their body is that AAC system. You cannot separate somebody with significant disabilities from their AAC system because it's part of them. Nobody gets to see and touch your private parts. Nobody gets to see and touch your AAC system as well. Like I have users who have private, privacy screens over them. They don't want to feel unsafe, people looking at their privacy. We've got to talk about concepts of who can see and touch private parts, and make sure that all of the professionals who are involved understand that the users have AT-AAC systems and bring it to their appointments, set up in medical records, ways for people to add up all of the adults are in there so that the doctors are in there. You go to the doctor and they have that AAC system, and everybody talks about who can see and touch those private parts. No, anybody can say no to touching, right? No, I don't like that. Make sure people understand and have access to that vocabulary, and that you practice preferences and you practice saying no in safe environments. If you look at the main screen, this is Touch Chat Word Power 60. I like that. I like that. It's all right there. That's bad. That's not good. Flexible use of these systems in lots of different environments. This was a fascinating discussion that I had with Dr. Shoshana, because in her ideal world, we would talk about comfortable versus uncomfortable, and we talk about the idea that you have a safe touch if your parents putting you into bed, holding hands, hugs, all of that feels safe. We don't really want to use the word okay and not okay, although sometimes what we do like and don't like changes, because sometimes things can be confusing. There have to be concrete rules about touching that we address with people, and we have to know words like safe. You can bring those up in very challenging situations, but also we have to use the word safe, like when we're crossing the road. Are you safe? Are we touching the oven? No, that's not safe. When we're having sensory experiences and our bodies are all over the place, which happens a lot with people with significant autism, are they doing that in a safe way? Because when things get confusing, if inappropriate touches register as confusing touches, we sort of have to educate people about different types of unsafe things so that we know what what makes them feel a certain ways. You have to talk about things that happen in your mind. You have to talk about your physical body. You have to talk about how things can be done with different parts of your body. As speech therapists, we look at sort of oral injuries. But when you have the words safe versus not safe, versus not uncomfortable, when people ejaculate and things like, it wasn't sort of an uncomfortable experience, right? It might have been actually quite a nice experience. And so there's lots of tricky things that go on in people's mind. So your language has to be very, very careful. But linguistically, not everybody has the language level to understand all of these like nuances. So you just sort of focus on like the behaviors of people rather than the people, and practice like the language in those safe environments. This young lady has a very limited language system. And we were just really practicing the fact that if she says something's bad, then it goes away, right? I couldn't get into comfortable, uncomfortable, safe, not safe. Like, no, she isn't there yet. So right now, she tells me something's bad, goodbye, it goes away. We're respecting her bodily autonomy in the way that she can manage that conversation. And we have to normalize having discussions about body safety. Often we are dealing with people who are, physically being handled long after, your typical 3-year-old who needs help in the bathroom. And so we have to be able to ask them meaningful questions, both at home and in the environment. Like, was that okay when I picked you up? Was that okay when I transferred you? Like, I would never walk behind a wheelchair user and just move them without asking them. Like, we have to teach consent. Consent is, giving people permission to engage in something, right? Not just for sexual activity, but also for sexual activity. A person who is, seeking consent, we have to make sure that we are teaching consent to people in a way that is meaningful to them. We need to understand that no means no, and a lot of people I see coming out with sort of prompt dependence need to understand that consent can change and it needs to be mutual, and it's very challenging for like people who are being moved around and have expectations on them where they're not in control of their own body a lot of the time. We can teach people through our routines with individuals, with family members, and through our care routines, to model questions about consent and behavior. So that's sort of one of my big quests, is to reframe that. Give grandma a kiss. No. Do you want to give grandma a kiss? And then when things happen, also, like, it's very hard for people. They have this rule that they talk about in school. If something happens, you say no, you run away, and you tell somebody. Like, this is great, love it. And the kids came back and they gave me examples. And then we sort of started talking about like the clients that we're working with. And we realized that, like, when you have these mobility challenges and you have these language challenges, like, it's really hard to hold that information and formulate it in a way that it is acceptable for people, because abuse happens, and you have to have a way that people feel safe, and you can come to us if things happen, if things do happen. We're always here to help you. Open up those avenues of communication. Often happens to speech therapists. Within education, one of the big topics that came up for me was a secret versus a surprise. So what is the difference between a secret and a surprise? So when people have a secret, they don't want you to ever share it. Whereas a surprise is something completely, something you just keep from somebody for a short amount of time. And the subtlety of the language is really important, because you have to understand what grooming is, and the language and the behaviors that are used in grooming. I'm not really too worried about people who are here because I'm pretty sure you understand grooming of the preparatory stage of abuse and what happens to do that. But people, they gain trust in people slowly, and they break down these boundaries, and we saw it happen, you know, within our personal community at school, and it was very intentional. Grooming looks like genuine care. So for the people who are in our environment, we need to understand the behaviors um, that those who engage in grooming do. And they're sort of, they don't look like scary individuals. If I tell you that the rabbi that got done for it at my kid's school, like, was the nicest dude in the world, you would not have believed that he was responsible. Like, you could, like, shocked, people shocked. But like, what these people do is they embed themselves within our safe spaces, right? They break down boundaries very slowly, and they isolate people emotionally and physically, and they gain trust of people to sort of undermine relationships, pushing those boundaries really, really, really gradually. So for you to understand the red flags of behavior, of grooming behavior, and to be able to say to people, like, we have rules that prevent sexual abuse, that's really important. You know, inappropriate relationships are not always adult on adult relationships. Sometimes for individuals who have IDD, you'll have sort of 21-year-old with caring for a 16-year-old. And in those sort of situations, it's really easy for like inappropriate relationships to form, and sort of so you have to sort of look at how the secrets are used within grooming, right? No healthy adult would ask a child to keep secrets from their parents, and that sort of language that you build up over time, right? When we have that, when we're planning like a Mother's Day surprise, you know, we're going to plan like a surprise. We're never going to say we're going to keep a secret from our parents. Surprises, like, they have that ending, and we never keep secrets from our trusted adults. We're going to be really cognizant about our programming, and we're going to make sure linguistically, like, that we understand, you know, we never keep secrets. Touching is never a secret. Touching with kids is for the whole world to see, and touching is never a game. When it comes to your body safety, you have to make sure that people are able to tell an adult to tell those trusted adults. So one of the modifications that you want to make within an augmentative and alternative communication system is to personalize it. The best AAC systems are the one that I see are the ones that are highly personalized. This dude, George, I don't know who he is. He's the PRC George. He's probably my age by now. But the way to help learn the pathways to where you're going is to personalize. Like, that personal photo should be the one of the user to get to those pathways as you go through the language. You would like a user to be able to identify 3 to 4 trusted adults that they know that they can talk to and they can ask questions of. So with that, you need all of the people in that client's life in the system. They also, for safety information, need to be able to state their first name and their last name and their caregiver's first name and last name. One of the pitfalls I found as a speech therapist is that, you know, do you know the sequence? Do you know how to get there? Like, it's all very well, like, if you've got that page open and they can push, you know, their name, but do they know from that main page the sequence to get to that necessary icon? Oh gosh, calling 911. It's a very advanced skill. Some people can get there, some people don't. But like, I can tell you, like, my kid, okay, he actually just got into UPenn. Everyone should be really proud of me this week. So he's a very, very bright individual. But I'm telling you that 2 years ago, we had an incident and the gentleman couldn't call 911. Like, my daughter had like sliced her chin open, and I was like holding her. I was like, And he fell to pieces, which just shows how you need to practice the language. I'm hurt. What the problem is, do you know your address? Is your address cradled into that AAC system? And then like, don't hang up. So, you know, because even if you can't verbally communicate, they can find you. I can't tell you how many people have like come to me with there's this like inflexible like language where they've only been taught, you know, what's your address? So as a you got lost, someone, you know, finds you like, where do you live? Come on, where do you live? Tell me, where do you live? And if you say, where do you live? They don't answer it because this like rigidity of how the question was taught. And then you say, what's your address? And they're like, 7, 12, 13, you know, and they'll sing you the address because sometimes they've like learnt it through a song. You need to practice that practice the information, in practice flexible questions, and then identify those safe helpers within the community. You know, we look at the community helpers within the work, within the jobs, within the peoples, like who are those community helpers? If I get lost, who can I go to? You know, we look at this, you know, the police officers, the parents, or the mother with the child, if you're lost. But then do we go with these people? No, we do not go. We stay where we are. You know, giving people clear rules. That's what Dr. Shoshana has worked on, creating clear rules to teach boundaries and safeties. And she says that we are not scared, we are prepared. So we want to teach users to be prepared with safety education so they can be better advocates for themselves. These are lots of tips that she shared with us, which I'm going to share with you. You know, taking pictures of, you know, children or users at the beginning of the day, just in case they elope. Eloping's a real problem for people with autism. That could be a sensory thing, and boom, you're off. All of a sudden, you've gone from, no joke, I've had this happen, Manhattan, not to me, thank heavens, but a family I work with, from Manhattan to Randall's Island. Run. No personal names on backpacks. People are much more likely to go with somebody who knows their name. Songs for the phone numbers and, you know, and the addresses. That's a different way. As a speech therapist, we can see that kind of taps in slightly differently. Magnets on the car so that when you're getting out, I guess this is as a mother with 5 kids who's got them all in the car when they were little, like everyone keeps a hand on the car. Pre-arranged places, meeting places, practicing fire drills, you know, in different places. And then for the technology, you know, when you get to middle and high school, we are handing people very powerful pieces of technology that did not get handed to you when I was that age. And we have to provide rules about harassment in these avenues, help people identify and report, you know, cyberbullying and sexual harassment that occurs online, role play and practice language and scenarios, and make sure that, you know, people understand what constitutes, you know, harassment and what's acceptable, reviewing sort of institutions, schools, policies, and making sure that they are in an accessible format. Sometimes, you know, utilizing different, you know, AT screen readers, different ways to access all of this. What has come out of some of the research is that you know, sexting, we sort of started with that whole like Snapchat thing, and it's totally illegal. It's pornography, but children and youth have an entirely different outlook on sexting than I do. The Journal of Pediatrics in 2018, 12 to 17-year-olds, 1 in 4 are receiving and 1 in 7 are sending sext messages. So if you don't think it's happening, then you have blinkers on. So we have to find language to address it, and we have to think about the devices that we have. We have to make sure that the language that we're putting into the devices allows people to participate with their peers, but also keeps them safe. A lot of, you know, these platforms that people go on are linked to sex trafficking. They are not safe places, but they are also places of wealth of information. So knowing like the language people are using and helping them access through the technology that we're giving them in a safe way, recognizing what cyberbullying is, and talking with, your teens about online etiquette, because otherwise we're just exposing people who are very vulnerable without really having ways to protect themselves. Nudes, like we have to teach people to say no to nudes, because give them language, give them ways to explain it. We've had so many incidents in bathrooms. I don't know what it is about bathrooms. Like, what is it with the kids in the bathrooms? Like, please stop it. But you know, the cameras on the bathrooms, you have to find ways for your AAC users, because they're often the ones with the cameras on the devices. They get drawn into things, trying to be popular, trying to be like relevant with their peers. That there are all sorts of ways that things can go wrong. Sextortion, these are photos that you didn't send, and this is happening to younger and younger people, and they're gaining information about people by looking online. We have to tell law enforcement. The FBI put out a warning about sextortion as an issue. Teaching people, and parents, when we're giving them assistive technology, so that they can protect their learners, looking at this, just simple YouTube controls, simple iPad controls. I mean, I say simple. My poor children, they went to a sleepover and they're like, Mommy, why can everybody else do these things on their devices? I'm like, because your mommy runs the IT department. Sorry. Ask first. Oh, this is a funny one. For a while, we had a black screen on the iPad that just said ask first. So they pushed the home button and you can't get into it without mummy's password. Ask first. That's a rule, right? Before we're going online, we're having discussions, we're having rules about all of this FaceTime. You really would rather I was not here with my shirt off. Same goes for your kiddos. Rules about posting. Just because this technology that we have to make sure that like the language is there, and that you're practicing your own boundaries, and you're practicing, what is consensual to you and what you're comfortable with. Within that, organizational change. Sacred Spaces is a resource that I found, which I thought was phenomenal. They were like a cross-denominational initiative to look at sexual abuse and other abuses of power within Jewish institutions in North America. And they sort of had, you talk about foundational elements where you have like a groundwork for creating safer and more respectable, equitable environments within the organization. Means that you have to have clear mission statements from above. You have to know what constitutes acceptable and unacceptable behavior within organizations, and have ways to articulate what that acceptable and unacceptable behavior is. Guidelines, providing sort of clear norms about those expectations, screening for people who come in, and we know that screening is going to fail, right? That screening will fail. We have seen it fail. So looking at an infrastructure that looks at how problems can be reported in a trauma-informed way, with language that can support things, having a standardized grievance process so that it's timely and people feel safe, and that there's going to be no repercussions, and living the policy. I mean, I got to tell you, like the moment the FBI knocked on the rabbi's door from school, the next day the school had an open email about it, because the transparency, showing what had happened and showing this, okay, now we're going to deal with it, and creating a pathway forward so that we do not hide behind our errors and mistakes. It is not negotiable. We have to add in all of the essential elements into AAC systems and make backups. Create small moments to talk about health and safety, because it can't just be like a one-time thing. The language has got to be there. If you have an AAC system, I want you to make sure that all of the systems are in, all of the vocabulary that I've touched upon today is in there. These are some great program examples. This is RVATS, and they really, they came to one of my presentations at ATIA, the Assistive Technology Industry Association, 2 years ago. And from there, they made these folders. I felt like a proud mummy. And just talking about, safe behavior and your own personal boundaries of things that you like and ways to advocate for yourself. These are some resources that I found. This is some of the applications that Claire Raymond used to utilize to help people like identify parts of their body in like a non-threatening way. Anatomical Dolls is one of them, and My Body is another. I think they're pretty much free or exceedingly low cost. After somebody discloses, there are sort of very specific things that I'm not even going to get into with you guys because you basically are the experts in this. There is this health kit. It's called the Sexual Health Toolkit, and they are targeted to help individuals with IDD have resources to promote body safety awareness in a way that is accessible. Elevate Us, they have a free 60-minute workshop, which helps individuals who work with people with IDD find ways to be comfortable about discussing such sensitive topics. I'm just going to get into a little bit about funding for AAC because it really is huge and vast, and I could probably talk about this for a whole day, quite frankly. But you can access AAC through education, through medical, and through education and employment funding sources. Early intervention within your educational environment. You have EI. Best if people can get you between EI is 0 to 3. If you can do that, the device is yours, and it is amazing, totally worth doing. CPSE and CSE, if you get devices funded through that, it remains either the property of the county or the school district if you're in the New York, and so you have to be aware that backing up vocabularies. There is medical funding, both private insurances and public insurances cover AAC. Medicaid's the best. And then if people have Medicare and their things are only covered like at 80%, we can go to different foundations like the Gleason Foundation to help with fill in gaps. And they also actually will cover things like voice banking. When people nowadays, Apple, you can literally do it on your phone. You can record your personal voice. So instead of what comes out of these AAC dynamic displays sounding like a robot, then it can actually sound like a real voice. That's not paid for by insurance, but the Gleason Foundation will pick up the bill for that, which is really nice. If you are an individual who is able to pursue higher education or employment, this Access VR is an amazing funding source, and they will equip you with the assistive technology that you need to go through those avenues. So with that, these are some references that I have as a reminder.
Gemma, thank you for that fantastic presentation. There's 2 questions, if I could ask them. One is, how are the current spellers programs included in the options that you described?
So there's in terms of text-based AAC, there's things like predictable protocol for text. Absolutely, if somebody has literacy, and all of the symbol-based systems that I show you also have keyboards with predictive text. So there's on all of them. Yes, literacy is what we need, because a system is only limited by the symbols that are in there. If it's my responsibility to program that in there. Oh my gosh, I had the best thing yesterday. Okay, like I had a gentleman, sorry, I'm just going on a tangent, who had Sunny, right? So like, how could I was asking him what his teacher's name was, and his teacher's name was Sunny. And what did he do? Like, he was so like, he didn't have literacy, he doesn't know how to spell, but he went to like the weather and told me Sunny. I was like, you're so smart. Like, that was amazing. Like, that was such flexible use of language. But yes, ideally, you would want to be able to get to literacy, and there are many applications. And if you, the TRAID loan programs across New York all have applications for people who are spellers. There's also a really good free one, well, not free, but it's about $16, called Speech Assistant. It's pretty robust.
Thank you. And the last question that we have is, someone had worked with someone and they used AAC with the person, but the person would often use it to trick staff and his parents so that they could go outside and do things or maybe, elope from the program. So do you have any advice for teaching people to use it appropriately?
I would really question things like how would you teach anybody to do anything appropriately? And that's sort of what I was talking about when I was body autonomy being part of your voice. Like you can't take away a button because you don't like what somebody's saying, in the same way that you can't take somebody's mouth. It's akin to abuse, quite frankly. So yes, you have to address the behavior, but the communication is the communication. So I'm sorry, if you're saying I want to go outside and you're tricking somebody, well, good for you, quite frankly. Let's address the behavior, not the communication. The fact that you're saying I want to go outside as opposed to smashing your head against the wall, I'm okay with that.